Today we are talking about the credit miss using your VA loan. Stay tuned. Welcome back to my channel. I am Dianna Howell with the Howell Group at Keller Williams. My guest today again is Chris Montz with Benchmark Mortgage, and today we are going to be busting those myths regarding your credit issues using your VA loan. Chris, what are we going to be talking about today?
Today we're going to go into the credit requirements for VA loans. There's a lot of myths and misconceptions out there revolving around, what kind of credit you need and everything for a VA loan. So we're going to kind of hammer down on that today.
Very good. So Chris, what kind of credit score do you need to use your VA loan?
Credit scores they vary across different investors or different lenders that you deal with. Some lenders require 620, some 680. We actually require a 580 or higher. Sometimes we can actually go a little bit less if it's a unusual circumstance that we are dealing with, but a lot of misconceptions out there is I guess realtors are probably more guilty of than anything. They think that VA loans are kind of for the lower credit score people, but the average VA loan credit score across the nation is 718. So there's a lot of great credit score deals out there, but a lot of guys that deal with issues coming out of the military, sometimes they have a little bump in their credit, so that's sometimes where we work on that to help them get up if we need to, or just, like I said, 580 is low, so that's pretty easy to get to.
Very good. Chris, can you use your VA benefits when you're coming out of bankruptcy?
Yes, actually you can. There's two different ways. There's two different types of bankruptcies. You have a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13. The first one I'm going to is about a Chapter 7. That's when you file and basically everything is wiped clean. Chapter 7, after 2 years from your discharge date, you can actually qualify for another VA home loan.
Oh.
And in some unusual circumstances, you can get inside that 2-year mark if you've got a, unusual circumstance that may be out of their control, like if they was injured in combat
Right.
and had to file due to medical bills or something. As long as we can document everything, we can get by that 2-year mark.
Okay.
But usually the standard is 2 years from discharge date.
Okay. So Chapter 7, they can still use their VA benefits.
Right. A lot of myths out there is you got to wait 7 years or 10 years, but it's actually 2 for VA home loans.
Okay. What about Chapter 13?
Chapter 13 is you can actually buy a house while you're in a Chapter 13, as long as you have 12 months of good pay history and permission from your trustee. So I've done several of those, and that is something there that a lot of people don't know. That sometimes what happens is once you file a Chapter 13, your credit score could drop, but in a lot of cases I've seen, their scores will be good. It's just we just have to document the Chapter 13 in the pay history, and we're good to go.
So just to recap, Chapter 7, your slate is wiped clean.
Right.
And then Chapter 13.
That is your repayment plan.
Okay.
So, say you have, let's say $30,000 of debt, and they say you pay back so much over a 5-year period, and the trustee will negotiate that with the creditors.
Okay.
So that's typically how those work.
All right. So they're going to take that into effect on your ratio to debt.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Chris, are you still eligible to use your VA loan if you've been foreclosed on?
Yes, actually, the standard rule is 2 years from your foreclosure sale date. So, but there's some unusual circumstances there too that you can actually get one closed inside the 2-year mark. But usually the standard that we look for is 2 years. Actually, I did a loan for a guy a few months ago that had been foreclosed on within his 2-year period, but we had enough documentation that we was able to get him into a home inside the 2-year mark. Because sometimes I've seen to where, especially with a Chapter 13 or Chapter 7, they may have included their house into that Chapter 7 or 13, but it may be 3, 4, 5 years before they actually foreclose on it. So
Right.
It's kind of a misjustice to the system there. But that's just the way it is. So, but we just have to document it properly, and we're able to work that out for them.
Okay. So Chris, can you still use the VA loan if it was foreclosed on?
Yes, if you had a previous foreclosure that was a VA home loan, first of all, there's a lot of parameters you got to look at on that, but main things you got to see if you was charged back anything on your entitlement. So if that's the case, then we have to pull your COE, or certificate of eligibility, and see what the chargeback was. But you might not have used all of your entitlement, so we may still have enough entitlement to buy the house that you want. Or in some cases, they may have to, repay the, the difference on their foreclosure, if what the entitlement was used. But I've very rarely seen that required. Okay. But sometimes what they'll do too is, I've heard that there's a way that you can get your entitlement reestablished, even if you've had a chargeback, if you've got some sort of disability reasoning behind it. So I haven't had many of that happen, but I have heard of people doing that.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. So Chris, what I'm understanding is if a veteran has filed Chapter 7, Chapter 13, or they foreclosed on a VA loan, there are still some options. And there's so many different scenarios that they really need to talk to an expert lender that strictly deals in VA loans to completely understand. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean there's a lot of companies out there that do, claim that they specialize in VA home loans, but everyone may interpret the guideline differently, and even some underwriters may view the guideline differently. So it's always good to get a second opinion. If you talk to one lender and you're turned down, I mean, I've closed several loans behind other lenders because they interpreted the guideline a different way, and I was able to document and prove it, to where we was able to get it through underwriting. And because we go strictly off of what the VA guidelines say, we don't have overlays like some lenders will have. Because sometimes, like if a lender has, say, a 620 credit score requirement, well, that is not a VA requirement that they may try to tell people. That is an overlay that is put by that investor that basically they don't want to take the risk of the lower credit scores. So that is something there that, make sure you talk to an expert in the industry. I like to think that we're pretty specialized in this market, so feel free to give me a call, and I'll be glad to help you walk through it any way I can.
Okay, that's great advice. So be sure if you have any questions at all using your VA benefits to buy a home, to talk to an expert that strictly works in VA lending.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Dianna.
Chris, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
And if you have any questions out there using your VA eligibility, feel free to reach out and contact Chris with any of your questions. His information is in the links below. If you want to just leave a comment, we'll be happy to respond to you, or you can contact us. We post videos every Wednesday, so we will see you next Wednesday.